Hey everybody, welcome back to the shop. This is Todd with Industrial Comfort. Today, I'm going to show you how to make a router jig like this, which you're going to need if you want to make square or rectangular trays and dishes like this one. So let's go ahead and get started. As you'll see, making one of these router jigs is a piece of cake, but there are several critical considerations that must be thought about as we do this project. The first of which is the material that we're going to use for the jig itself. You don't want anything too thin and you don't want anything too thick either. So I've gone with a 1/4 inch, which is really the sweet spot for a jig like this. I'm also using acrylic, which is translucent. It comes with this paper backing, which I'll peel off at the end, but it will allow me to monitor my workpiece as I'm going through and performing the routing. If you choose to use plywood or another firm material, that's totally okay as well. Now, the other consideration we must think about is how we're going to attach this to our plunge router base. Now, we could remove this black plastic bushing and reuse the threaded holes here. I think that that's an extra step I don't really want to deal with, so I'm going to use some of these empty holes and back the bottom of this directly to the bottom of the plunge router base with some flathead screws and some wing nuts. That'll allow me to easily move this on and off. Now, I will lose a 1/4 inch of plunge capacity because I'm adding more material to the bottom of this base, which then brings up our second or third consideration, which is ensuring that you have the right bushing. So a bushing is what allows us to ride along the edge of a template if we're using a template. Now, if this is not long enough, you're going to burn right through your template and ruin your material. So you got to make sure that you've got one that extends below the bottom of the base and obviously not too far so that it's pushing the router back up off the workpiece. Now, finally, you obviously want to make sure that your material is wide enough to cover the material that you're working with. So in this case, I've got about a 9.5 inch piece of wood that I'm going to be routing. 24 inch wide jig is going to be more than sufficient. Even at halfway at 12 inches, I'm going to have complete and total coverage. Now finally, this doesn't have to be super precise. Unlike many other projects where you want some really precise measurements and holes, as long as the holes match to the bottom of this, I wouldn't worry if it's exactly centered or not. We just want to make sure that we have enough coverage for our workpiece. So let's go ahead, we'll get this centered, we'll mark the hole, start drilling, and get this thing assembled. I've roughly centered the plunge base to this piece of acrylic, and I'm going to use a punch here to just gently dimple the material so that I know where to start drilling. I mentioned a minute ago that we're using a 1224 bolt that's 1.25 inches long. It's got a flat head that will go ahead and recess on the bottom of this plate. Now, this fits my router base. If you use something other than a Bosch, you'll just want to make sure that you get a bolt that fits the existing holes that you have in your plunge router. Now, I could have gone with a 1/4 inch, but I'm deciding to go with something slightly smaller just to accommodate any margin of error. I'm always using a 1/4 inch bit for the same purposes. So again, just make sure that you measure a bolt that's going to accommodate your base and make sure that the length will accommodate as well. So I chose 1.25 inches because I'm mounting this to the bottom of my base without removing that black plastic glide. If I were to do that, I probably could have gone with a smaller base. So just think about that when you're deciding what bolt you're going to use. I'm now going to countersink the holes that I've drilled so that I can nest the heads of these bolts so that when I slide over the material, these bolt heads don't catch the template that we're using. Okay, for the next step, we're going to want to cut a hole that's going to match the hole in the bottom of this jig, the bottom of this plunge router base, so that obviously our router bits will go through. Jig. So we're just going to place this over the holes that we drilled and use a pencil to trace the hole that we're going to cut. The opening at the bottom of the plunger base is a little over 2 inches, so I have a 2-inch Forstner bit that I'm going to use to create that hole. Now that everything is cut, I'm going to go ahead and attach the router base. I've also decided to use a few washers between the wing nuts and the base here. Okay, and we are ready to route. So let's go ahead and give this a test run. As you can see, this router jig worked really well. I mean, there are virtually no marks in here. I'm going to have to do minimal sanding. So, if you found this helpful, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe. Thanks for watching.